Hey everyone, Chris here. Thanks a lot for clicking onto the channel. I really do appreciate it. In this video, we're going to be talking about how to mitigate the effects of stress and anxiety in our life. Now, if you could for just a moment imagine you're walking into a high stress situation, whatever that situation might be for you, and you're dominating. You're cool, you're calm, you're collected, you've got it together, you're thinking through this whole thing, you're making good decisions, and you arrive at a good outcome for yourself and for those around you. Now, the reality is that oftentimes when we go into that stressful situation, we're kind of in a low-level chaotic mindset, right? We're not thinking things through all the way. We're not necessarily making the best decisions, and we may not necessarily have the best outcome. So how do we mitigate the effects of stress and anxiety so that we can maintain a calm state and blast through whatever kind of stressful situation that we're in? And in this video, we're going to be talking about 6 things that are going to help you blast through that stuff, maintain a calm state, mitigate the effects of stress and anxiety for both acute stress, which is like going into a stressful business meeting, or chronic stress, controlling that day-to-day, fighting the clock kind of a stress that we are all faced with all the time. So, the first thing that we need to talk about is what's happening in our mind and in our body when we get stressed out. This is number one. We need to learn, because if we don't understand what's happening in our mind and in our body, we can't conceptualize or contextualize the rest of the tips that we're going to be going over today, okay? So, among other things, we've got 2 basic parts of our nervous system, and they are called the sympathetic nervous system and the parasympathetic nervous system. The parasympathetic nervous system, or the longer of the 2 words, is our calm state of mind. This is when we are the most creative, the most contemplative. This is when we can think and reason, right? This is a great state of mind to be in if we're making big decisions or we're in a stressful situation. The other is the sympathetic nervous system. And the sympathetic nervous system is our fight, flight, or freeze part of our mind, okay? Now, that part of our brain served us well through the Paleolithic era and, our development as human beings over the millennia. So when we were faced with a saber-toothed tiger, for example, or something like that, that fight, flight, or freeze response helped us to survive as a species up to this point. The problem is that when we get into a high stress situation and our sympathetic nervous system is activated, your body and your mind don't know the difference between a saber-toothed tiger and a stressful business meeting. So what happens when we get stressed out? When our sympathetic nervous system kicks on, what happens is cortisol and adrenaline pour into our bloodstream. Whenever this happens, our thinking mind gets turned off. It goes offline because our whole body is now geared towards survival, fight, flight, or freeze. This is kind of that feeling that you get, or that experience that you've had where you're in a stressful situation, right? And it seems like it's a blur. And you can't even remember all the stuff that just happened, right? And whenever you finally come out of that stressful situation, you're thinking to yourself, geez, I should have said this, and geez, I should have done that. And that's because at the time, your thinking mind was offline. Now, something else that you might have noticed as well, whenever you're in that stressful situation and then you come out of it, you have this response like, whew, right? That, ooh, I'm glad that's over with. And you have that deep breath, probably followed by a few more deep breaths. And that deep breath is your body's natural way of turning off that sympathetic nervous system and getting back to a normal, steady state. A steady state where you're back to your creative thinking, you're back to reasoning, you're out of panic mode. So what we're going to suggest in this video is that we can use that deep breathing technique to control an acute stress response and to mitigate the effects of chronic stress throughout the day, okay? So now that we've learned and understand what's happening to our bodies when we are in a stressful situation, we have the opportunity before we go into a stressful situation, like if you know you're going to be going into a business meeting that's going to stress you out, right? You get the butterflies in your stomach, your breathing rate goes up and things like that. You can visualize success, and that's going to be the second tip that I can give you today. It's worked for me over and over again. Visualize that situation going smoothly before you go into it. That by itself will help to mitigate that stress. Now, when you're going into that stressful situation, no amount of visualization is going to stop that stress response. So whenever you go into that stressful response, you need to first be aware of those symptoms. And that's going to be the third tip that I'll give you, is the awareness that your body is getting into that sympathetic state, okay? When you feel the symptoms of stress, your heart rate going up, your breathing quickening and maybe being more shallow, your mind kind of going offline, you can't think straight, your mind is all over the place, you know you're going into a stressful situation, and you know you're going into that stressful state. Awareness is the first thing, and what I'd suggest you do is to actually talk to yourself in your mind like, hey, I'm feeling stress. I know I'm feeling stress, and I need to mitigate those effects. That takes me to the fourth tip. We can now use what I call tactical breathing to mitigate those effects once you're aware that you're having them. So if you're going into that stressful meeting or you're going into that stressful situation, take some deep breaths through your nose. That helps to mitigate those effects, just like before, whenever I was mentioning, whenever you're coming out, you take that deep breath, right? That kind of response. We can take those same deep breaths as we're going into that situation to stay level set, to stay calm, to tell your body it's okay, we don't need the cortisol and the adrenaline, everything's cool. That is what helps keep you calm and steady in a high stress environment, is that tactical breathing before and even during that meeting. Just take deep breaths while you're in that meeting, and make sure it's diaphragmatic as well, so you're kind of breathing with your stomach moving in and out rather than your shoulders and your chest expanding, because your chest and your lungs, the biggest part of your lungs is down low. So whenever you take a deep breath, your diaphragm should be expanding, not your chest and your shoulders. The next tip that I'll give you is, whenever you're going into that stressful situation or you're in a stressful situation, is to have a mantra. That mantra could be whatever you want it to be. It could be as simple as, I got this. That's my mantra. I got this. And if you're saying that to yourself in your mind, it does wonders for your state of mind and how you're going to get through that situation. So develop your own mantra to help you get through that. Finally, the last tip I can give you is to maintain. Whenever you're facing these chronic stressful situations all the time, maintaining that low level state of mind, that parasympathetic state of mind where you're able to create and think and reason, is to stop every now and again, maintain that awareness, take some deep breaths as you're going through those situations, and it'll change everything in your life, just like it has for me. So I hope this is helpful. I'd love to hear your comments. If this was helpful, please share, like, and subscribe. I'd really appreciate that. All right, I'll see you later.